Hey there and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to prioritize a list. This method can work for any type of list, but we're going to be talking specifically about a feature list, often in the context of a technology project. In the world of software development, the saying is this: for a given period of time, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. We'll dive into exactly what that means and the details of the method. Let's do it. Hi there, and welcome to the Jamie on Purpose show. This show is for the young professional woman who is ambitious and aspirational and wants to make the world a better place. We'll chat all things professional and personal development along our journey to being tomorrow's world-changing CEOs, government officials, and community leaders. Let's jump in. Okay, so first I want to start by saying that essentially every organization is a technology organization these days. So whether you have an internal IT or you are a full-blown technology product company, you likely have some interaction with a group of people who identify as developers or otherwise deal with technology. And regardless of where you are in the organization, there are times when you'll need to talk to those people. And if you are, in my case, I am one of those people. So I am a project manager for those types of projects, technology projects. And so recently I had someone else in the organization that I'm working with ask me, hey, how do I speak the language of the IT team? Like I want to be able to speak their language when it comes to us walking through all of the things that we have asked to happen. And I don't quite know how to do that. So here is the answer to that. So because everyone is interacting with a technology person in some way, shape, or form, this is really the method that I would recommend when it comes to working through a list of requests that you have made to them, specifically when those are being prioritized from a business perspective. So the best format for this that I have found is in a meeting, whether remote or in person, with at least the product owner, so the primary business stakeholder, the development lead, so the person who's in charge of the dev team and who's in charge of managing their work, and a project manager, whoever's in charge of owning the list, or can otherwise help bridge that gap between the two people. So, hi, I'm the project manager. All right, so the first thing that you got to do is create what we call a backlog. So this is just the full list of all of the items. If it's for, the existing website that needs to be updated, this is everything from bugs, enhancements, completely new features, anything like that. You want to put it into a list that will then become what we call the backlog. And so if we take the website example, maybe that is we want to update the footer to say this thing, and we need it to have the link to, these two new web pages. Another item might be, hey, we need to add this entire new page to our website, and we need it to be, this URL and have this form on it and all of the good stuff. So those are all of the things that go into your backlog. And then once you have your full list, you start working on the two biggest drivers of your prioritization. And that's number one, priority, obviously, but there's a little bit of nuance, and two, level of effort. So within priority, this field is driven by the business person. So this is the product owner makes the decision on how much of a priority this particular feature is. If you are coming up on a launch or some other big release date, my favorite one to use is what's called Moscow. So it is an acronym. Some of the letters are capitalized, some aren't. That stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have. So this method of prioritization says for this launch on, I'll pick my birthday, on March 8th, it's also International Women's Day. For this launch on March 8th, what are the features that we absolutely must have? So we absolutely must have this new web page on the website. So that one becomes a must in the priority. And so you go through all of them and identify what are the must-haves, should-haves. So, we really should have this, but it's not the end of the world if we don't. We could have it, it could go either way. It would be great if we could, but no worries if we won't. And won't have. So the won't have is probably my favorite one because it's just a really clear cut, like we're making the decision that this is something that's on our backlog, but it's just not going to be there for this March 8th release. The other method of prioritization that you can do is just kind of high, medium, low. This is if it's in more of a general backlog. So you aren't necessarily going for the March 8th release, but it is just as we continue to work on things through the backlog, this is the highest priority, this is the medium priority, and this is the lowest priority. So those are the two different methods of prioritization. So that's one column. If you're doing this in a spreadsheet, which I highly recommend, if you want to see an example, you can go to jamieonpurpose.com/7, the number 7, because this is episode 7. You can get an example there. So in your column priority, I would set it up to either be Moscow if you're making the backlog for a particular release, or just the general priority. I typically do low, medium, high, and real high. It felt like there needed to be one more level of escalation. I've also seen critical as that top one. I like real high because that just captures what it is that we're trying to convey there. So I like that one. Feel free to change those to reflect whatever makes the most sense for you. And again, that's driven by the business person. So according to the business, according to the revenue generating things, according to the user experience, according to the overall stability of the product, the business person, the product owner is the one who's saying, yes, we must have this, we should have this, could have this, won't have this. So then the second major component of this is level of effort. And this column is provided by the dev lead. So that's why you have that person in there also, so that they can say, okay, item number 1 is updating the footer. That is a low effort kind of thing. And so we have Moscow and we have low, medium, high, real high. You can also do the same thing, same criteria for level of effort. So the low, medium, high, or real high, or some variation of a t-shirt size. So this is a small, medium, large, extra large effort. You really want to get a sense of a relative sizing for each of these different features. And so you can go through the list and provide the relative level of effort for each of these features. So adding a brand new web page with lots and lots of information and inputs and input validation and graphics and all of that good stuff is going to be relatively a higher level of effort than updating the footer to change the color and add a couple links. So that is the level of effort column. The real beauty of this process, and the reason that it's so important to have this as a meeting and to do this together, is it's a conversation and it's an iterative process. So as you're going through the list, the business owner says, this feature is a must-have. And the dev person says, okay, well, that's going to take all of the time that we have from now until March 8th. Are you sure that that is something that you want? And if they say yes, then all right, great. We have our entire scope. Or if they say no, then they're like, okay, well, maybe this one feature becomes a won't have for the March 8th release, but the next couple of must-haves that are a smaller level of effort can all get done. And I, as the business owner, so the business owner is making the decision of, given the input of the level of effort that it will take to capture and to complete the feature, that is helping me to prioritize what's actually going to go in for the launch. Is it more important to me to have this one big feature complete, or is it more important for me to have lots of smaller ones complete for the release? And that's on the business owner to decide, because they are representing the business and the interest of the business. That is what we mean when we say you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. Because clearly, in a perfect world, the business owner would be able to go through all of those and say, these top 5s are must-haves. And we would say, yep, we can do that. But most of the time, the first pass must-haves, at least one of them doesn't make it to the final cut, because the sheer amount of effort that is required makes it a lower priority for the totality of the release. I hope that makes sense. But that is the method, that is the iterative approach, the collaborative approach to really prioritizing things. And those are the two major inputs into determining what's going to make it for a particular release or not. It's a similar process for if you're not trying to get to a release, if you're just knocking through things, except you have a lot more flexibility. So if the business owner says, this is absolutely, the highest priority and it's going to take 3 months, well, then it's all hands on deck. This one thing is the highest priority. That's what we're going to. So once you have your either Moscow priority or general high, medium, low priority, and you have your level of effort, and those are pretty stable, you can take it one step further and actually stack rank them. So actually say, our number 1 priority is this. Our number 2 priority is this. Number 3 is this. And so instead of being in buckets, it's truly a 100% prioritized list. These are the things that we are working on in this order. And going through that exercise typically gives a lot of clarity to what is most important to the business. And then also on the dev side, where are we spending our efforts to knock things off the feature list. So in addition to those 2 fields, the priority and the level of effort, some other columns that you'll want to identify for all of the features are, you want to have a status. So you'll want to be able to track where this is so that the list can be a living document. So typically I'll have a not started, in discovery, in development, in testing, and then deployed and completed. So those will be my different statuses there, and we can track the feature as it moves through the life cycle. Another one would be just a general notes column is always good to have. You can throw whatever you want in there. I typically make it the last column in the list because then it's It can be however long it needs to be, and it has all of the space on the rest of the spreadsheet. So depending on the nature of the feature list, sometimes I'll add a column as well for dependencies. And this is if there really are several that are intertwined and it's important to do them in a specific order, you can denote that on the dependencies list and reference the other feature that this one is waiting on. So if you ever were to look just at line 7, you'd be able to see that line 7 has a dependency on line 5, and therefore we can't do and start working on line 7 until we have line 5 complete. If you are using this for something other than development, if you're using this for any other type of list that has lots of different team members, it's also important to add an owner column. And that just helps provide clarity to everybody of who owns that particular task and can get it across the finish line. So as I mentioned earlier in the episode, you can use this approach for any type of list. So if you as a working human have a whole list of things that you need to get done, you can certainly apply this, priority and then level of effort application to the different things that you need to get done on your to-do list. The one caveat that I will say is that I feel like people will come at me with pitchforks if I don't acknowledge that a lot of people will say the absolute highest priority that's on your list should always get done first. If you truly believe that that's the number one needle mover, then you should do that one. And I don't disagree. And doing this exercise for your to-do list actually provides you that clarity, because you can absolutely keep something as your must-have, but just go into it knowing, hey, this might take me this entire week to do this one thing, but I truly do believe that it is the highest priority, versus going into it blindly thinking, yes, this is the highest priority, but I'll still have time to knock out the 3 things right under it, when in a different week, you would have been able to do those 3 things, but because you're working on this top one, you're just not going to have the time for it. So that's how you can use it in your personal life or professional life that's not related to a technology project. All right, so some bonus tips. You know how I love my bonus tips. And these are really around the mechanics of the spreadsheet itself, so how to make them better, more user-friendly. And again, if you go to jamieonpurpose.com/7, the number 7, you'll be able to see an example of this. So it'll make sense if me just talking about it doesn't quite land, if you're not an Excel person. So bonus tip number 1 is to use what's called data validation and a lookup page to create drop-downs for easy filtering and generally clean data entry. So step number 1 in doing this is, in your spreadsheet, you'll have at least your one tab that has your backlog on it. So that'll be formatted as a table, and you'll have your one column for the feature name, then you'll have priority, level of effort, whatever other columns you want to have. So that's all on one spreadsheet, one tab. So you'll want to create a second tab. And I typically just call this tab lookup. And then I'll go in there and all of the values that I want to be able to enter in for things like level of effort or priority, I will write them in individual cells. So for my Moscow, I would have a must, should, could, and won't, each in individual cells. And then I'll come back to my table where I have my Moscow column, highlight the whole column, go to data validation, and say that I will only accept values that are part of this list. And then go to my lookup table and highlight my list and say, these are the only values that I want to be able to enter in to this Moscow column. or this priority column. So then when you go back and you're entering in your information about your different features, you'll be able to just pop open a drop-down list and it'll show you the data, the must, should, could, and won't, that's how the order it goes, that you entered in as part of your data validation on your lookup table. So I would do this for all of your priority, level of effort. If you have anything else like that, you can even do it for owners. If you have a predefined list of your owners, it makes it quicker to enter in the data because you're able to just hit the drop-down menu and then click and select, and then you're moving on. But it's also really important when it comes time to filter and sort your table. So when you say, okay, let's just look at the shoulds, you can then go to the top of your column, your priority column, and say, hey, only show me the values where the Moscow priority is should. And because they're all spelled exactly the same, they're formatted exactly the same, because you were only able to enter in one version of should and it wasn't a free text, then it makes it really, really quick to be able to say, yep, all of these things are captured under this one data, one piece of data, one category. Again, feel free to go to my website to see an example of this. I promise it will save your life. Along with that, this was one that I actually learned from somebody that I worked with. And so if by chance that he's listening, thank you. This has been a game changer. So when you are writing out those options for your data validation, so when we're on the lookup table and we're writing down must, should, could, and won't, if you can prepend those words with 01-02-03- in the order, the chronological order that makes sense. So if must is your highest priority, then that one should have 01-must. Should be 02-should, and then on and on. And what this does for you is when you go back to your big table of your feature list, you can sort the list, and by default, the only way that you can sort that list is alphabetically. So if you're tracking with me, we have must, which starts with an M, S for should, C for could, W for won't. And so if we order those just in alphabetical or just in reverse alphabetical, it's not actually going to reflect the order that we want to see them in, because generally speaking, we want to see must at the top, then should, then could, then won't. And so by doing this prepend magic, when you sort alphabetically, it'll say, hey, those are numbers at the beginning. I can sort those in number order. And therefore, you have a very clear, easy way to filter and sort your whole table in order of priority that is not necessarily alphabetical, but is numerical because you put that extra step in there. All right, so I hope that this was interesting. I hope it was helpful. And again, if you want to see an example, go to jamieonpurpose.com/7, the number 7, to see an example. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.